Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. So we were discussing Shirodbala Roy's reminiscences. We all know that she was she was widowed when she was very young. In those days, all of us know that child marriage was very common, and she was living a austere life which widows were supposed to live in those days. There were so many restrictions, and they had to obey those because society demanded, or society made it compulsory for them to follow certain restrictions. Maybe they were designed in such a way to protect these widows as child widows. But of course, afterwards, this social system was slowly abolished, and a legal marriageable age was fixed by the first by the British government, and then later on, when India became independent, uh, the rule still stands. But there are violations of this rule, and even today, there are marriages which take place in some states of India, some backward states of India, where uh, women are married. I mean, the girls are married at a very young age. There's a legally fixed marriageable age. But anyway, those days it was very common to see young girls being married off, though they went to live with their husband much later. They after marriage they would continue to stay with their parents, and maybe at a later stage they would join their husband or go to the husband's house. So this Shirodbala Roy was one such girl who became a widow at a very young age. Her husband died, and then that changed the entire course of her life, and she took that opportunity, I mean, if you call it an opportunity, to lead a kind of pure life which only widows could afford to do in those days, because it was very very rare in those days for women to remain single without marriage. So the only way one could remain single was either they are child widows, but there were some women who chose to remain single, and Holy Mother supported them a lot because most of them were teachers or chose to become teachers in Nivedita school. So the first women's reform movement, which was started by Sister Nivedita, who was of Irish origin, but who spent her entire life practically in Wimbledon, in London. And she, in fact, had started her own school, kindergarten, based on the principles of Montessori and others, which were prevalent in those days. So she was an extremely talented and successful woman with her own school, which she had started in Wimbledon when she met Swami Vivekananda, and was also well known as a political activist and an activist who fought for the rights of women in her own way. But then Swami Vivekananda had a much higher mission for her, and he took her to, he asked her if she could help him in in his work of education for girls and women, especially in India. So most of the girls who came to her school, either they were child widows, because uh, most of the conservative or orthodox families would not send their young girls to school. It was a sort of taboo in those days, because to send a young girl was thought to be extremely out of the place or risky. And even though Sister Nivedita assured them that she would personally come and collect all the girls, she had a very tough time convince the parents of the girls to attend the school. But there were some widows who had that opportunity because they would the widow remarriage was prohibited in those days till a bill was passed when it was permitted against the wishes of the orthodox section of Hindu community. But that bill was passed, and one of the proponents of that was Bal Gangadhar Tilak, in whose house Swamiji stayed when he was a Parivrajaka. But they say when Swamiji was asked about the age of consent bill and many other things which they were opposing, many of the Orthodox Hindus were opposing that. Why should the age of consent, if the age should not be fixed? So whenever a good opportunity is available, the girl should be married off. So there was a lot of discussion on the merits and demerits. See, every social rule has some merits and some demerits. But Swamiji refused to be drawn into controversy. When he was asked, he said, "Who are you to solve women's problems? They will solve it themselves." He believed that women, once you give them education, all you have to do is give women education and make facilities so that they can decide for themselves what is good for them and what is bad for them. So if they want, they could change certain social customs, provided they had a say in that matter. It was not for men to decide what women should do and what women should not do. That was Swamiji's firm view, and he expected Sister Nivedita, who joined him in 1898, to run a girls' school and help him in his work of empowerment of Indian women, in the true empowerment of Indian women, not in the Western model. In fact, he asked Sister Nivedita to Indianize herself so that she could understand the not only the scriptures but also the Indian culture, and understand the merits and demerits of the Indian system, and then educate the girls in line with all those great cultural ideas because of which Indian civilization had survived for centuries. He didn't want her to transplant a strange system which perhaps would not work. The system which worked in England or any other Western country would perhaps not work in the Indian conditions. So he wanted, Swami Vivekananda wanted Sister Nivedita to familiarize herself. That is why it took 2 long years for her. He wanted her to thoroughly familiarize herself with the Indian culture and understand it in depth and assimilate those ideals so that she can do, she can work for the true empowerment of women. And education was one of the means, a right type of education, a proper type of education. That is why if you read Sister Nivedita's complete works, which can be divided into 2 portions. One portion deals with her ideas and experiments which she did before coming in contact with Swami Vivekananda. A lot of publications. She was a versatile writer, a great thinker, and a very, very well-established activist even before she came in contact with Swami Vivekananda. But after meeting Swami Vivekananda and having assimilated all the Indian ideals, her articles and her books, which were written after that, have a different kind of approach as far as women's education is concerned. So Shirodbala Roy and others who perhaps were encouraged to continue their education, and many others, young women of those days, including the sister of Jagdish Chandra Bose. So they, in their own way, tried to help Sister Nivedita in her mission. And some of them later on became nuns when the Ramakrishna mission, Ramakrishna Sharda mission or Sharda Math was started during the Holy Mother centenary. So it took a lot of time, though Swamiji wanted the women's math to be established as an independent organization even while he was alive. In fact, if he had lived long enough, he would have started the Sharda Mat, because he was very keen with Gaurima as the center. Now, the Gaurima was mentioned in the previous incident, where she is taking Shirodbala Roy to Holy Mother with all the girls of her school. And that was the Sharadeshwari Ashrama, which unofficially, I mean, had, though it was not part of the Sharda Mat, it's not even a part of the Sharda Mat right now, but that was the first attempt in building up a monastery for young girls, for those who preferred to become nuns. So Shirodbala Roy, people knew that she was deeply and spiritually inclined and had taken initiation from Holy Mother. So the young girls of that Chardeshwari ashram, the Brahmacharinis, they wished that Shirodbala Roy joined them, because she was also perhaps educated. Definitely she was educated. So they wanted her to join Shardeshwari ashram and stay with them. But somehow, for some reason, Holy Mother told her, you can just continue as you are now. And these reminiscences, they cover that entire period when this kind of conflict was going on in her mind. Because and all the wonderful reminiscences which we get, which comprise the gospel of Sri Ma Sharda Devi, unlike the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is a very, very systematically recorded book, these are stray reminiscences, but because it was compiled and later on organized in a proper way, and it was published as the Gospel of Holy Mother much later. Before that, it was published as a part of her biography, saying the life and conversations. So the conversations part were all compiled together, and many things were added later on based on the reminiscences sent by some of the women disciples. And then finally they were compiled. There were some men disciples also, and also some monks who wrote their reminiscences. All this form part 1 and part 2 of the Gospel of Holy Mother, but now it has been combined and published as one book. So that is how the Gospel of Holy Mother. It in Bengali, it is also known as Mayer Katha, means the conversations. Most of the reminiscences are naturally in Bengali, except for I don't think there are any reminiscences which were originally recorded in English. So most of these were translated by different monks and different people, and then compiled and collected together in a single book. Now we come to the incident, what happened after Shirodbala Roy accompanied Gaurima, who had already started the Sharadeshwari ashram, to Holy Mother's house, that is Udbodhan, which had been started at that time. So Mother makes a remark, oh, you have brought Shirod here again. Shirod actually was very, very dedicated to Holy Mother. Holy Mother said, no, after visiting the Shardeshwari ashram, you can go home because it will be late. Women were not expected to travel late. But the Gaurima was a bold lady, and she said, don't worry, I shall make arrangements for your return and you come with me. So she was a very aggressive type of woman, being a nun. For a long time, she had wandered all over India, all alone, without any fear. We discussed about that last time. So she was a woman who was a born nun, a born sannyasini, and she didn't care for any opinion or social opinion, as normally monks are supposed to do. They keep themselves out of social customs and nothing can bind them. So she was a little bold, a little brash at sometimes, and when she was walking on the streets, she never cared. The typical modesty that you normally used to see, people used to see in those days. Women were very conservative, very orthodox, and they were not seen walking in such big groups in the streets. You can see them now, but in those days it was something very rare. And Holy Mother, true to the sentiment which was prevailing at that time, she said, oh, Gauri has come and now she has created such a whole commotion, because she knew whenever she traveled with her group of disciples from her ashrama, they would create, everybody would notice that, and she never bothered about it. She just walked. She came, brought all the girls to Udbodhan just to have mother's darshan, and everybody took prasad. So, but Gaurima knew that Holy Mother had told her not to come, Shirod Bala. So she says, I brought Shirod. She told me that this wasn't your instruction, but I said to her that I will mention it to you. The mother replied approvingly. Then mother had to approve, and she was kind enough and said, you have done well. I then she perhaps forced her to spend the night there because it was already late. And then Shirod Bala Roy says, I shall never forget in this life the joy I experienced on that night. So it was very rare. Normally, mother would ask Shirod Bala because she was a widow, and secondly, the society, I mean, her relatives and all who were not staying very far, they would not like somebody, especially a widow, to stay in some other place. So she would often return home, but that day she got a chance to stay in the company of Holy Mother, her Guru, and that was a great benefit. She says, I shall never forget in this life the joy I experienced on that night. Now she's saying what happened. She says, a year prior to my becoming a widow, when she was married, she was very young. I had one day cut and dressed a number of papayas. Papaya is a fruit, especially in Bengal. They use raw papayas to make curry. It's not the ripe ones. So they have some kind of fluid which comes when you cut, which can harm the fingers. They can irritate the fingers, and some people are very sensitive. So the juice of the papayas caused an itching sensation on my fingers, which became very much swollen, and the skin of my fingers cracked within a few hours. This created such a bad sore on my hand that various kinds of medical treatment failed to cure it. I suffered from it for 12 years. Now you can imagine what type of allergy she had. Maybe it was an allergy, but or maybe it was a genuine problem. And she says she could not use her hands. Normally people eat food by using their hands. That is a popular custom in India. Spoons were introduced only by the British. But she says, I had to use a spoon for taking my food because that food which she took, she could not tolerate even the least irritation. The fingers were so badly bruised because of, or the allergy had caused so much of irritation in her fingers, and the wound was so deep, it was refusing to heal, and she suffered continuously for 12 years. So at times the condition would subside, but when it became aggravated, the contact of my hands with water made the sore septic. So sepsis would result, and then she found it very difficult. So though I had been in close association with the Holy Mother for the last 1 year, I had never shown my hands to her. She had somehow did not want to disclose that she had this problem. Then mother would not allow her to do any work. So she rather preferred to suffer rather than disclose her problem to her. I had decided never to say anything to her about this impermanent physical body of mine. And I had kept this chronic disease a secret from her, lest it should somehow infect her too. I avoided visiting her whenever the disease became aggravated. So whenever the fingers became the disease or the irritation or the wound became aggravated, she would not visit the Holy Mother. One day, however, I went to see her when the sore was rather bad. On reaching her place, I avoided making pranam to her, lest she should notice the sore when I touched her feet. But this thought made me quite restless. Just then I saw that a widow took the dust of mother's feet, wrapping her hand with the loose end of her sari. This gladdened my heart. And so I too took the dust of her feet, wrapping my hand with the end of my sari. No sooner did I salute her in this manner, the mother asked in surprise, Daughter, Why did you take the dust off my feet, wrapping your hand with your cloth? Is there anything wrong with your hand? I was now in a fix, and my heart began to quiver. I thought, Mother could have questioned the other woman, but instead of asking her, she has asked me, why did you take the dust off my feet in this way? So I replied, I have a disease on my hand. And then she said, let me see what has happened. On seeing my hand, she lamented so deeply that I was astounded. She said, ah, dear, you are here so long and your hand is in such a bad condition. Though I am your mother, I wasn't aware of it. I feel so sorry, my dear. Then she asked me how long I was suffering and how I had contracted the disease. I had to disclose everything now. Then the mother said to me, my dear, I am in such a state that I remain absorbed within myself. So I fail to observe you. You perform puja with this hand, and that's why the disease is lingering. Well, come with me. The flowers and leaves offered to the master and the Charanamrita, the holy water of worship, will be removed and thrown into the Ganges. Come quickly. I followed her to the other room. She said, look, the Kamandalu contains the Charanamrita as well as flowers and leaves. Dip your hand up to the wrist into it. I did accordingly. Then she said, your hand will be free from this disease. But avoid handling fish, meat, onion and garlic with these hands as far as practicable. You cannot completely keep away from them. When you handle them, there may appear some eruptions on your hand. Perform the master's worship daily, and as soon as you notice some eruptions, apply the master's Charanamrit, that is the sacred water, on them. It will cure you. Have you trimmed your fingernails on the day you cut the papayas? I replied, I don't remember. She said, you must have pared your nails and then come into contact with the papaya juice. These two together are responsible for your trouble. So Holy Mother was so kind and considerate and also knew what was the cause. And then she said, in the afternoon, the mother said to the other women, none of you, including your husbands and children, should cut the nails with the nail cutters of barbers, for it may lead you to many bad infectious diseases. My daughter has contracted such a disease on her hand, but by the will of the master, it will not linger. On that occasion, the mother spoke of the various dangers involved in eating together with others from the same plate, in lying on the same bed with another, and in using somebody else's cloth and bath towel. She also told us how a person's good or bad physical condition is transferred to the body of another. Strange enough, I had never told the mother how I passed my days and that I was compelled to cook fish and meat also. But she said you will not be able to avoid them. Whenever you handle meat and fish, you will have eruptions on your hand. But as soon as the master's Charanamrit is applied, you will get cured. It was a matter of pleasant surprise that the day on which I dipped my hand in the Charanamrita, from the very next day, I got permanently cured. Whenever I touched fish, meat, or any other such food, I got eruptions on my hand, but they disappeared in an hour's time after applying Charanamrut on them. When I became cured of this disease, I said to her, Mother, I have not come to you to get my bodily ailments cured. You see, she was spiritually so sensitive. She says these are trivial things. You have cured me. I thank you for that, but I have not come for these. You can't get rid of me as easily as this. Means she wanted something higher. She thought mother, by curing her trouble, wants to take the easy path and not do, not help her in her spiritual path. She was more concerned about that. She says, these troubles, these small things, I can handle myself, I can tolerate it. But I have not come for this. So you can't just, by curing my disease or curing my hands and bodily ailments, don't think you have fulfilled your purpose. I want something more. That's why I've come to you. Then mother laughed and said, child, your body is also my body. I suffer if you do not keep good health. So this was a revelation uh, to Kshirodbala Roy, because she never knew that according to the law of karma, why mother was saying this. She was suggesting a solution, because curing the body of, especially of a disciple who is really devoted to her guru. Holy Mother was her guru and Thakur was her Ishta. So she believed that if you fall sick, then I also will suffer. So that's the reason. It's not that she was asking Kshirodbala, she was trying to cure her just to show some kind of miracle or anything. She was more keen because she felt that the effect of the bad karma or effect of that suffering has to be taken by her guru also. So she says, your body is also my body, because that oneness which one feels when at that plane, that transcendental plane, when you in the part of the cosmic mind. So any feeling which the disciple feels is conveyed through the cosmic mind to the mind of the master, the guru. So I suffer if you do not keep good health. So at least for my sake, you have to be healthy. That is what she wanted to convey, and not that the body was important or the body has to be pampered or something like that. But basic health or basic good health is necessary for spiritual progress as well. One cannot afford to neglect it, especially for those who are practicing sadhana. So naturally, when people misunderstand this idea or this concept, they think after all body is temporary. Yes, it is temporary as far as um, making it enjoy luxuries are concerned. That is not the goal of life. But that doesn't mean for genuine suffering, genuine ailments, one should not try to get rid of it. It may be because of karma, but that doesn't mean that one should not apply medicine. So mother was so rational and so scientific, and she was also hinting to Kshirodbala Roy, you can't afford to be careless. This body is not yours. This body belongs to God. Because this body is doing sadhana, this body will be used to make spiritual progress. The longer it lives, or maybe the healthier it is, the better it is. So now Kshirodbala is trying to understand what Holy Mother meant when she said, child, your body is also my body. I suffer if you do not keep good health. What she meant was that any kind of suffering, any kind of uh, uh, trouble, whether it is physical, mental, because all are connected from the ultimate point of view. So even if she tried to hide her physical ailment, somehow the mental vibrations, that is how these great spiritual giants or avatars understand. You don't have to tell. Sri Ramakrishna could read the mind or the subtle body and the samskaras of a person as if he could see things inside a glass cupboard. So it was very easy for Holy Mother to see through the Kshirodbala Roy's effort to hide her disease. And she had a false sense of idea which she must have got. That is what happens when you interpret the Shastras. Because it is temporary, why should I bother Holy Mother for that? But what is temporary? Why temporary is something which you can afford not to enjoy, because if you enjoy, it will be temporary. Those material benefits without which you can survive. But these are important things. These diseases, they have to be addressed. And sooner you address, the better for you. Can do better work, you can do better service, provided you use it. Not just for the sake of curing the disease, but with the healthy body, you can do more sadhana. So Shirot Bala writes, she says, it was my resolve that I would never ask Holy Mother verbally or even mentally, even in the mind. She said, I had taken a resolution for any physical comfort or monetary or other material gain. She knew the value. She knew that we should not ask for these kind of things. I was afraid that the mother might appease me by bestowing those things, and I will not get what I really deserve or what I really want. Whenever I complained that I could not get any result from my worship, the mother used to say, I am your guru. I know whether you are making progress or not. How can you understand it? You will achieve everything. You will achieve everything. Most obstacles in the worship or sadhana are not external. They are all internal. This is what Holy Mother is telling her, that you don't judge yourself whether you have made progress or not. And externally, you may not see these things, but internally, there is a great change taking place. Most of the obstacles in worship are not external. We complain that we can't do this, we can't do that, but internally, nobody can prevent us from doing what we want, the good things especially. Then she says, they means the external obstacles will fall off one after another by taking the master's name and by meditation. So she says, just go on doing. It is the master who is curing you. It's the master's Charanamrit which is curing you, because he feels that you deserve to have a healthier body so that you can do more japa, not to indulge yourself. If that is the intention or attitude, then perhaps you will not be cured. If enjoyment or if just some kind of indulgence is the only goal, then you cannot expect your hand or your any other ailment to be so easily cured. But he says, all the obstacles will fall by themselves. You don't have to pray for it. They will just go, they will vanish. Obstacles will come. You'll have bodily ailments because of the karma. But somehow, by the one who is a karma dhyaksha, one who rules over your karma, he has the capacity to lessen the effects of karma. That is why Holy Mother used to often say, where a sword wound was due, you will get away with a small pin prick. The law of karma has to work in any case. So it will be effective. You may receive a small wound, you may receive a small pin prick, or you may receive several pin pricks, but you will be saved from some sword or some major calamity. So that's why she says, by masters constantly taking master's name, doing his japa, and by meditation, all the evil effects of your karma, which create external obstacles, will fall off. So just go on doing your duty. Don't pay attention to whether the blemishes of the mind are persisting or not. Don't bother. Oh, I have not made progress. Oh, I have made progress. Don't try to judge yourself, because these are all temporary states. Just as you are saying the body is temporary. I don't want to come to you for these, for the treatment of these silly things. I can endure them or try to cure it myself. That was our attitude. But what about the mind? The mind should be at peace. If the body is disturbed and the mind is also affected in the process, then it's not a good sign. So don't pay attention to whether the blemishes of the mind are persisting or not. If they persist, then you just wait. The solution is not to worry about or be anxious about it. Just go on doing japa, and then by repeating the master's name, by Sri Ram Krishna's powerful name and the mantra, and through meditation on his divine leela, divine play, you will slowly, gradually, these obstacles will fall off by themselves. She also used to say, she means Holy Mother, the branch of a coconut tree drops off by itself at the proper time. If those who have seen the coconut tree, the branch falls, and then the dried branch is used in various ways. It is used as a fuel, it is used for making brooms, if you use the leaves properly and uh, uh, use it properly, it can be converted into, so there's so many things one can make out of that. But that will not happen if you just bring down the branches. They have to dry completely and fall off themselves. So she says the branch of a coconut tree drops off by itself at the proper time, but one has to exert much to tear off the branch before the proper time arrives. If somebody wants to pluck a raw branch, then he'll find it very difficult. But if you allow it to dry, then it will automatically fall down. You don't have to pull it. Likewise, she says, Holy Mother says, everything will come about at the proper time. Then because if you try to force the result now and you want immediately, it may not happen because the branch is tender. You have to put in more effort. But if you give it a little time and continue with your spiritual practices, then the branch will fall off itself. I mean, all the karma which you have accumulated over several lives will just fall off, and you will be required to do and focus on lesser and lesser things, lesser and lesser worldly things, and life will become a little more and more easy. Then she said, you are doing all that is necessary for you. Everything is going on all right. My child, it is a good fortune for you to have come here as a widow at a tender age. You won't have to do much. All that you have to do is to pay obeisance to God at the end of the day. If a man firmly takes hold of one idea, then he doesn't have to perform any other discipline. You will achieve everything spontaneously. This is known as Shraddha, or focusing on a particular thing to the exclusion of everything else. What is sadhana? Why mantra is given? Because you don't confuse your mind with many other types of sadhana. A person who is not initiated into a particular spiritual life, the main purpose of initiation is to focus on one particular discipline to the exclusion of all other things. All other things have their proper place in life, but they should all be subservient to the main sadhana. So she says, if a man or if a person firmly takes hold of one idea, that is of sadhana, then he doesn't have to perform any other discipline. By any other disciplines, Holy Mother means you don't lose your focus. Just do as I told you. Just do japa and meditation, and everything will be achieved spontaneously. So that is what Holy Mother told her. Now Shirodwala says, she discloses something which she has not disclosed till now. I was married when I was 10. So you can imagine a 10-year-old girl married off and became a widow at the age of 15. So even at the age of 15, she would have been a very, very young girl. Taking refuge at the holy feet of the mother, I had said to her, Mother, I am surrendering myself at your holy feet. Kindly protect me. The mother had assured me, saying, don't worry, there is nothing to fear. The master himself will lead you by the hand. Not a single word which came from her lips proved to be untrue. Now I am nearing 60. So these reminiscences, these were written when she was 60. That means 45 years later. And the Holy Mother's holy hand, has touched my head, and my head and hands have touched her holy feet. Thus I have become blessed. Holding to her words means Holy Mother's words, when she said, there is nothing to fear, the master will lead you by the hand. I have lived this long life, means 45 years after she came in contact with Holy Mother and got initiation from her. And she says, I have lived this long life without ever being haunted by the desire for enjoyment. I have experienced only bliss, nothing but bliss in my life. Except on the day the mother gave me initiation, she never instructed me as to what I should do. She used to say that the master would do everything. We may not understand this with our limited intellect, but her words were true and are true. Even if one does not call on the master and the mother all the time, they protect their children from dangers and misfortunes. I have firmly realized now that without their grace, there means the Sri Ramakrishnas and mothers, none can conquer worldly attachment by simply displaying a certain kind of bravado. So you need the grace of the Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. That is what that was her firm conviction, because she saw how in her life, no matter how many obstacles were there, somehow she held on to uh, her faith and prevented herself from being attached to the world, to conquer worldly attachment. Then Holy Mother had once said, one should not go to see a deity empty-handed. Therefore, I used to carry something or other when I went to see her daily. One day she said, you have no money. Why do you bring these things every day, my child? It will be enough if you bring a myrobalan, that is a small fruit which was not very costly. It was a very cheap fruit, very commonly available. I eat through the mouths of all of you, dear. Your eating is as good as my taking food. How much I have eaten since coming to the circle of the master. So she is trying to assure her disciple, knowing that she is not in a position to buy costly gifts. She says, just don't bring. If at all you want to bring one uh, myrobalan, which is very commonly available in Bengal. My second brother, now she is telling about the second brother, who was seriously ill, came to Calcutta for medical treatment. He was to be operated upon by Dr. Sarvadikari. All the members of our family had come to Calcutta. I had come to understand that the surgeon was not sure of the survival of a patient after this kind of surgical operation. I took my brother to see the mother. It was a Sunday. The male devotees used to make pranam to her in the afternoon. While on the way, my brother purchased a garland of flowers to offer at the mother's feet. It had escaped my notice. On reaching there, I began to brood that my brother would salute the mother along with a crowd of people, and I would not be able to stay nearby. So normally, when men came, the women would withdraw. Would the mother notice him at all? When this was going on in her mind, she had taken her brother have just to enable him to take blessings of Holy Mother. But she was wondering that if I don't accompany, which she could not because women were not allowed, they were separate. In India, that is the system. The queue is always separate for men and women. Anyway, so he said, would mother notice him at all because he is a new person? While pranams were being made, I remained within the room. When the pranam making was completed, the mother called Radhu and the rest of us. She removed a large quantity of flowers and garlands which had been offered at her feet. Taking out a garland of tube roses from among them, she presented it to Radhu, saying, my daughter's brother has given it to me. Then she said to me, I have noticed your brother. Daughters means she considered Shirodbala Roy as her daughter. So daughter's brother, that is, she had noticed and she had understood that this is Shirodbala's brother who will be operated. And it was a very sensitive or a very difficult operation. I was surprised why my mother had not come there earlier. How did she know? I began to wonder whether my brother had brought that garland of tube roses. Among the many garlands, I could see only one of that kind. So he had brought it, the mother had accepted it, and taking that garland, she presented it to Radhu. And she also mentioned who had brought this, because Radhu was very fond of flowers. So I said to her, Mother, it is because of him that I wish to keep myself away from worldly life. I wept bitterly in your presence only with the prayer of shunning their company. If he dies, she was trying to explain why she is attached to this brother. Not that she had any attachment to her brother, But she says, if he dies, something happens to him, I shall have to bear the burden of his family. Because, mother, because I am in the midst of worldly people, I am not likely to survive, even though I have taken refuge at your feet. Now, what will happen to me? Please tell me, what am I to do? So she was worried that if something happens, because this is a very difficult surgery, and if something happens, their wife and children would be helpless. And then, as an elder sister, she has to take all the risk. She felt, as it is, she was not in a position. She wanted all to remove all worldly attachments, and now she's seeing this danger looming in front of her, which might make her again work and uh, depend on others to just help uh, her brother's family. Then the mother gave a wonderful reply. She said, even if your brother survives this particular operation, he will die one day, will he not? And if he survives, what good will he bring to you? So why should you worry so much? Because you're not attached in any way. You're not depending on him in any way. Even if he survives or if something happens by chance, what good it will bring to you? He will die. One day he has to die. I thought then perhaps my brother's life would not be spared this time. When mother said this, she felt a little concerned, because why would mother say that, even if your brother survives? So she thought perhaps this is a hint that he will die. But that very moment the mother said, reading her mind as it were, don't be afraid, the master is there. Keep a photo of the master in the operation theatre where your brother will be operated upon. He will protect him. So this was a very simple but very powerful solution given by Holy Mother. After hearing this, I returned home and disclosed it to all the family members. They all began to say, no more fear. He has touched the living goddess Kali, because he had gone a few days before and touched the Holy Mother's feet and offered her tube roses. There's no reason to fear. My brother came round by the grace of the Holy Mother and returned to his native place. When my uncle and elder brother, who had seen the Holy Mother, were told that in seeing the Mother they had actually seen Mother Kali herself, they accepted the idea and began to express the view that they had seen and touched the feet of Mother Kali, who was worshipped by Sri Ramakrishna himself, and that they would not have to go elsewhere for their spiritual welfare. I was the first among our family members to go to the Mother. Now, by her grace, almost everyone in our family has taken refuge at the holy feet of Sri Ramakrishna. So, and on another day, one afternoon, I was at the Holy Mother's house when a widow with a rosary of basil seeds, Tulsi Mala, it is known as. There are two types of beads normally. Now, of course, artificial beads are available, but normally Vaishnavas use a holy basil seed. I think it is made from the stem or the branch of the holy basil tree, the big tree, that is known as Tulsi Mala. And there is another type of mala which is made of Rudraksha. Rudraksha is a sort of seed which is found in certain parts of India, and when they are dried, a hole can be drilled and you can thread it and make it into a mala. So she says, a widow was normally widows who belong to the Vaishnava Sampradaya. They don't use Rudraksha. Rudraksha is supposed to be associated with Shiva, and they were Vaishnavas, so they would use a Tulsi Mala. Tulsi is a very sacred tree for Vaishnavas, especially for women and widows. So one day, a widow with a rosary of basil beads around her neck, Tulsi Mala was hanging around her neck, arrived to see the mother. Before her arrival, the mother had assumed a solemn attitude. When the widow advanced to salute her, the mother said, don't touch my feet. Salute me by touching the floor. But she ignored these words and saluted the mother, touching her feet. The widow was amazed to see the photo of Sri Ramakrishna and other things, and said to me, do you see how beautiful it is? What do you show her? The mother asked. Know that she worships him whose photo you are pointing to. Next, pointing at me, the widow asked the mother, is she your daughter? The mother replied, because she was not aware, yes, my child. The widow then asked, how many children have you? She literally took it that this Shirod Bala Roy was a biological child. And like typical worldly women, she asked, how many children have you? The mother said, the beings all over the universe are my children. Then the woman asked, no, I'm asking you how many children you have given birth to. Then the mother was not irritated. She quietly replied, my husband was a man of renunciation, unable to understand its import. This was beyond the widow's understanding. Though she was a widow, still the worldly attachments had not gone. And she thought that people can live a worldly life. There was no other life that was possible. What is renunciation? What she meant when she said, my husband or Sri Ramakrishna was a man of renunciation. Unable to understand its import, the woman pestered the mother with further questions. And then Shirod Bala Roy was irritated. She was also about to lose patience. The mother also felt a bit upset and said to me, you explain these matters to her. I can't do it any further. She is just pestering me with questions. She's not understanding anything and going on asking these worldly questions. Then I went on. You know nothing about the mother, I see. Why then have you come to see her? Those who come to the mother do not simply see and salute her. There is much to know about the mother. There are so many books about her. You can know all about her from many devotees too. Had you known a little about her, you would not have dared to ask her so many silly questions. You had better tell me what you have got to say and don't disturb the mother. Still, the woman continued. That woman said, that widow who had come, she says, my daughter visits this place. She brought big radishes here the other day. The mother said, many persons, she thought, if I remind her, as if mother was just waiting for these gifts. The mother very casually said, many persons present a lot of things. Can I take a note of all of them? No, I don't know your daughter. Thereafter, the widow left and the mother said to me, bring a little Ganges water and wash my feet. Fan me a little, I obeyed her. So, this indicates that mother, even before this widow could ask such silly questions and boast about her daughter who used to come, and the fact that she had donated a few radishes, she expected mother to remember all these things. But mother was not at all bothered whether anybody brought radishes or any other. It was all offered to Thakur and then prasad was distributed amongst all. So she was not one who would see who has brought which gift. She was totally indifferent to that. But not knowing this, Holy Mother realized that's why she was not allowing her to touch her feet. But because she had touched her feet, she had to wash it with Ganges water so that the burning sensation she was perhaps burning all over. Not only the feet were burning, but the whole body was burning. That's why she said, fan me a little. So these are reminiscences by Shirod Bala Roy. There are many more now. We will be discussing it in the next, the next Gospel of Holy Mother class, which will be after 15 days. Next Saturday, of course, we have the Bhagavad Gita class. So these reminiscences explain to us or show us, give us a hint of the divinity which Holy Mother liked to conceal a lot. It was very rare and only to a few selected people who were very close to her, like Shirod Bala Roy, who could see the divinity behind the human form of Holy Mother. And such people who, even after 45 years, she remembers all these instances. And maybe at the insistence of somebody, she has put down these reminiscences. Of course, they were in Bengali. And it is our fortune that we could get hold. These things were compiled in the English language. There are, of course, many other books also where the reminiscences of Holy Mother can be found. And one such book which is a wonderful compilation. And you'll find many things which you find normally in Bengali books in English is the Sri Ma Sharda Devi, the divine play, the divine play of the Holy Mother, Sri Ma Sharda Devi. That is a very important book published by our St. Louis Center, where people who would have otherwise no access except the Gospel of Holy Mother and a few books have been translated into English. So we can get a lot of information, but in a very coherent form, her whole life with all these wonderful incidents inserted at the proper place. A wonderful book is available, and if we read that, we'll get an idea of the wonderful divinity of Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi. Of course, there are two wonderful books before that which were published. One was by Swami Gambhiranandji, who wrote the Bengali and then translated it into English. And then there was another book written by Swami Tapasyananda, who Swami Tapasyanji was one of the vice presidents of our order. He also wrote a biography of Holy Mother, which was published from Madras Mutt. And some of the reminiscences from that book, the conversations which he had included in that biography, have been now are part of this Gospel of Holy Mother, which is now an independent book like the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So I'll take leave and see if there are any questions. If there are, I'll try to answer. Yes. Now there's one question, and I think we'll stop after that. If love for Master, that is Sri Ramakrishna, is extreme, deep, intense, then initiation may not be needed to attain the divine goal. Yes, definitely, nobody insists on initiation, but one has to check whether the love for the Master is deep. And it is the Master who will decide this. As Holy Mother said, she told Shirodbala Roy, who after having taken initiation from the Holy Mother herself, was humble enough to say that I have not progressed at all. My mind is, she could not understand what progress she has made. So Holy Mother said, you don't worry. That is the advantage of having a formal guru as a guide. But that doesn't mean that Sri Ramakrishna cannot inspire people directly. If the love for the Master by his grace is intense, extreme, deep, as you have said, then definitely you don't need initiation, because Sri Ramakrishna himself is the Jagat Guru. He can inspire anybody at any time, whether you are initiated or not. So it is left for the individual, and Sri Ramakrishna alone can judge whether that devotion is deep, the love is deep, the worldliness has totally vanished from a person, and he is not attached. He is attached to Sri Ramakrishna more than he is attached to the world. That is one test which one has to fulfill. If that is fulfilled, then everything is possible. But one thing is absolutely certain: you can't love God and Mammon at the same time. And Sri Ramakrishna, definitely, if somebody says, I love Sri Ramakrishna, but I love everything else also, sometimes maybe more. I love my car, I love my house, I love everything else. And along with that, I love Sri Ramakrishna deeply. Then something can be wrong with that person. Because it's not only Jesus who has said this. Sri Ramakrishna himself said that you can't, if you count the leaves and if you, then you cannot taste the mangoes. So there are these people who are satisfied with the worldly things, and at the same time, if they claim, whoever it is, if they claim that they love the Master deeply, then it has to be shown in action. So then there is one more question: does Thakur arrange for my guru when I am ready? Yes, if you are ready, the guru will come at the right time. As Holy Mother said, today we saw Holy Mother gave a wonderful example that if the branch is green, then the coconut branch which is hanging, if you try to pull it, it will not succeed. You will not succeed. But if it becomes ripe, when the right time comes, when the branch becomes ripe, then the branch will fall of itself. That means one will get a guru which one whom one deserves at the right time. All we have to do is to wait. Thakur definitely will arrange for your guru when you are ready. Okay. Anyway, this is somebody had asked this question, so I'll take your leave now. We will discuss about Holy Mother's wonderful life in the after one fortnight, that is the Saturday after this. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.